Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Founders Grid, sponsored by Gaper.io. Today we have Ryan Mendoza. Ryan is a principal at Scrum Ventures. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Mustafa. Really appreciate it and glad to be here.
So, give us a brief background about yourself. Almost 2 years at Scrum, what you've been doing before that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I started my career as an engineer. I studied electrical engineering and not on the computer science side either, more on the circuit design analysis. So more on the hardware side. So I started my career as a practicing engineer. I was working at Lockheed Martin out in Philadelphia. Joined on there after undergrad. I ended up leaving Lockheed Martin. I wanted to explore some different opportunities. I always thought I had sort of an entrepreneurial mindset, and being in a government contract work environment, I found a lot of the bureaucracy associated with that not helpful for someone who who is more of an entrepreneurial mindset. So I started looking at other avenues. I ended up going back to grad school and continuing my education in electrical engineering, but I focused in on nanotechnology, an area about 10 years ago that was sort of new and really hot and exciting. Um, my ideas were, or my thoughts were always to, develop some more of a knowledge base in a certain area, and then tailor that into some sort of entrepreneurial endeavor, which ended up happening for me. So I was actually on track for PhD in electrical engineering with a focus on material science. And I was developing some technology in a research lab at the University of Pennsylvania, and myself and some other fellow students in that lab developed some technologies, created some intellectual property, and we spun out a company from that. So we went through University of Pennsylvania's incubator system. It's a group called the Penn Center for Innovation. Really great. They do really great work out of UPenn. And we started up the company, found a CEO. I was on the technical side, so we had a CEO run the company, and I was in charge of helping to build out the technology. We ran that startup for about 4 years. During that time, I really started, looking more at the investing space a little bit. As I was pitching and fundraising for our startup, started to get really involved in that side of it, and started a small angel group where we made a few investments. After that startup, we ended up dissolving that. I moved into an incubator, a role at an incubator, helping companies spin out of the University of Pennsylvania, sort of get their legs under them with product and business model and funding and that kind of thing. And it was through that incubator that I met Scrum and started to develop a relationship with Scrum, and I joined on full time. It was a little over 2 years ago now. It was a transition from engineering to startups and then to investing.
Full cycle, huh?
Yeah, full cycle.
So, unfortunate times because of COVID, right? And it's acted as a catalyst for multiple industries, especially the tech sector, right?
Yep.
And it has hit the other ones, right? So going forward, post-COVID, how do you see? Okay, let's first discuss the investment thesis, right? So we're hearing that many VCs are rethinking their investment thesis, and many startups have been given warnings. So I would say call it warnings, maybe cautionary measures that increase your runways to 2 years or 2.5 years because the world looks shady a bit, right?
Yeah.
So any thoughts on that? Any points you would like to add on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're, at Scrum Ventures, a little bit of background, we focus on seed and Series A. So we're early stage investors. And we typically communicate that we are generalist investors, and we are. I would say we're more of a thematic investor, really, which means that we're chasing the macro trends, finding opportunities within these new dynamics and shifts in culture and economy. And coronavirus, the pandemic, has really caused us to focus more. So I think a lot of ourselves and a lot of funds who were more of generalists before the coronavirus now really have focused, because it's very clear now what industries are going to be helpful and going to fit what a new normal looks like, both now and when things start to stabilize, and whoever knows how long that this takes. And so some of those areas that we're focusing in on are remote work. We think
Right.
there's going to be a lot of opportunity and innovation in this space. It's already starting and it's happening very fast. In healthcare as well, and several different areas within healthcare. Um, Supply chain and logistics.
Right.
More people are ordering things online, right? So how do you make sure goods and services are provided to people when they need it? Um, and so those are a few areas that we're really focusing in on. I'd add automation and robotics to that as well. Um, those are some areas that we're focusing in on. I think most investors you talk to are really looking at those spaces as well. Um, and so, that's those are our initiatives moving forward over the next year or so, probably.
Nice. Interesting.
Yeah.
So, uh, what three pieces of advice are you giving to your startups in these times?
Yeah. So, when coronavirus first and the lockdowns first started happening, we went into full triage mode. So what that means was really stopping new investments. We did that for at least a couple months, and then how we could best support our portfolio companies. And at first, it was really dynamic, right? Really trying to understand what's going on. At first, no one knew how long this was going to last and how much of an impact it was going to have on the economy and on the venture world and the startup world. And it started becoming clear that this was going to be very impactful and stay around for a while. So it was really focusing on trying to help our companies understand ways that they could get a good runway in front of them, right? Whether that's reducing costs, um, what they can do with the workforce. You always want to do layoffs as sort of a last order of business, but a last choice. But if you can look at furloughs, salary cuts, that type of thing, really focus in on just the key business initiatives that they need, by stripping things down and reducing costs as much as possible. That was important. Um, I think companies were affected differently, right? There were some that were sort of in survival mode, and it was all about how can we just extend runway to get through this. Others were in a place where they were still seeing some traction with their product and with the business. So how can we supplement that? So a lot of them, there was advice around how to better capitalize. A lot of companies that were going out raising a Series A or Series B, a milestone round. We encourage more to look at a bridge round, right? Look at talking to internal or existing investors about how they can, cobble together a million or two instead of going out for a big raise, which is going to be tough to do right now. So to really give them a little bit more runway. The most important things were really how can we cut costs? How can we extend runway? And then if we need to bring in capital, what's the best way of doing that really without needing to raise a larger milestone type Series A, Series B, Series C round. Those are a couple of things that we're really working on
Yes.
openly. And then the third would just be strategy, right? A lot of them were, especially some of the earlier stage ones, were trying to understand the best ways to navigate through this with their product, right? Whether they're pivoting their product to a new vertical or that type of thing. So, helping out with strategy. So those are some of the kind of the three keys that are, at least from our experience with working with the portfolio.
So, last question, initially when it came down to fundraising, especially from a VC's point of view, early stage, it's more about getting to know the founders, spending time with the founder, understanding their market, understanding the product, the TAM and everything. But eventually it came down to primarily whether the founding team can execute it or not. The numbers, yes, the TAM, SAM, so on, we can make sense from paper, but eventually it came down to whether the founding team are the executors or not, whether they have that grit in them or not, right?
Yeah.
And it's always good to have outside office conversations over food, drinks, spending time with them, right? But now, how to assess over Zoom?
Yeah, I mean, it's different. It's very different. Candidly, prior to all this, prior to working from home and shutdowns, we're not a lead investor, so we're typically not in the role where we are getting to know a founding team over 3 months time, right? Oftentimes we weren't in that role, so we were usually doing maybe a couple phone calls and Zoom meetings and maybe one in person before investing. So for us, it wasn't a huge shift in our operations,
Right.
just because of the fact that we're not a lead investor, and we're trying not to take up too much of a founder's time during our diligence process when we're a smaller check size in the round, right? So, so it still has impacted us, but maybe not as much so as some other funds. But it's different, it takes asking some different questions, and you're not reading body language and jiving off of that. So, you're kind of asking a different set of questions. And it's changed the process a bit, but I find we're just as productive. So at least that's from our viewpoint.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you so much for being on the show. Take care, stay safe, and good luck with Scrum.
Same to you. I really appreciate it. Take care.